Okay, guys, alternate ending. Take 43.
With so many movies on the net and TV, it's kinda hard being up and film savvy. Do you catch a show while you're on the go? And how do you know what to keep or what to throw? How do you know what to keep or what to throw? Tune in, tune in, tune in to alternate ending. Tune in, tune in, tune in to alternate ending. Tune in, tune in, tune in to alternate ending. Tune in, tune in, tune in to alternate ending now. Please give a warm welcome to the hosts of Alternate Ending.
Welcome to Alternate Ending, where we're discovering good movies one bad movie at a time. I'm your host, Carrie Jarasinski, and today I'm joined by not only the quick-witted film critic Tim Brayton, but our favorite resident horror expert, Brennan Klein. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. I will claim that title real quick. I'll just put my little cement stamp on it so Tim can't snatch it away from me.
No.
You know, we are experts in different varieties of horror. I think is how
true.
I will let that one slide.
Our overall favorite resident, maybe. Overall resident horror expert, Brennan Klein.
I think you're just going to find different ways of digging the same hole in multiple locations, Carrie. So let's just
I think you're right.
slide on past it.
Well, let's just say only
good
one
vibes
of us,
only.
Only one of us has a gremlin visible behind us, and that is me.
I mean, that's fair.
That is fair. That's fair. But this week, thanks to Patreon supporter Granger D. Pohl, we'll be breaking each other's hearts with our bottom 5 80s movies of all time. I'm not sure how this episode is going to be possible. I love every movie from the 80s, so it's like choosing your least favorite child, which maybe it isn't like that because we all have
I have a least favorite one of your children.
Oh, I mean, I do too. But in case they listen, I won't tell you which one, but they know. But nevertheless, we're going to just try our best to try and find some that weren't so good. But before we do that, how's it going? What have you guys been up to?
Stuff.
Yeah? You look like you look
I don't know. It's the time of the semester when it's just like just trying to get by, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to do anything fancy, just trying to live my life and not drown in a pool of alcohol every night.
Well, that doesn't feel true because you are looking a little fancy. I feel like your hair looks not as long as it once was.
I did recently, yesterday, in fact, get my hairs cut.
Wow. It's looking good.
Thank you.
And you know, your hairs look a little shapely yourself, Carrie.
Well, you know what? I just happened to get a little bit of a trim as well. Got a few layers put in here. I'm trying to grow it out right now. I'm in a process with it, which I always regret. And then some sort of life crises will happen. I don't know. Tell me if guys do this. I don't know if this is a guy thing or I'm probably stereotyping. I don't know. Gender stereotyping. I don't know. But whenever I go through some sort of life crises or life change, it all comes off. I just hack it real short. So if you just follow the trends of all of my like family photos, it's like, whoop, grandma died that year. Hair's going short. You know, like, whoop, like something happened and it goes short. And then when things are going well, I grow it out long. So right now I'm in a growth mode, which I think is
So the longer your hair is, the better your mood has been.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that normal?
Yeah, that's totally normal.
I think changing your hair when something happens is normal. I think having it specifically longer means happier is a bit more idiosyncratic, but it's convenient to have it. So I'm glad to know going forward.
Okay.
One day I'll see you just go the full G.I. Jane and I'll be like, oh no,
It's
she found out about robbing me.
Yeah, well, isn't it? I mean, this is probably one of those misattributed Facebook quotes, but didn't Audrey Hepburn say, like, when a woman changes her hair, she changes her life?
Oh, I don't know, but I like that.
I like to go.
Yeah, and I would apply that to anyone who has any sort of perspective on their own hair, because I've definitely seen a lot of gay men do that too.
Okay.
I think we can just exclude the most clueless among us. But yeah, I do get that. I in fact just changed my hair. I don't know if I'm experiencing a life change
down a little
right now,
bit. It's
but
kind of
it is definitely more closely bundled to the top of your head than it has been.
Yeah, well, because okay, so the my big hair change was during the pandemic. I decided to start growing it out. And I was like, I'm gonna come out of this like Fabio, just flipping it around, looking beautiful. And that just never happened. My hair's very thick. It got all tangled up with itself. I kind of hated it. But I didn't want to just chop it off and go back to how I was in college because that just seemed depressing to me. Not that I was in college when the pandemic started, but I had that same hair. So I've been progressively like getting shorter and trying to find what I want to do with it.
Okay.
I did most recently, as documented on the one of the Bride of Alternate Ending podcasts with Tim, I did get it permed earlier this year. I was going for like a curly mop top thing, a la like a lot of the cute 1980s boys in slasher movies.
Hey.
But that also became really unruly. So now I'm kind of, unfortunately, the thing that I'm doing is trendy right now, which I hate when things that I have chosen to do are on trend, because that means people will think I'm trying to follow a trend, which is not really something I ever try to do.
Yeah.
But I am going for kind of a soft launch of a vague kind of mullet situation. Like I'm keeping like kind of curly wavies on the back, but a little more like really tight on the sides and the top a little more manageable. And I'm enjoying it so far.
Soft mullet is something I'm going to start using regularly. I like that. It's so funny you mentioned this, because when I did get my consistent haircut that I've been asking for the last 15 years, basically, I'm like, can you just take the weight out? It's I don't even know what I'm saying when I tell her. And then she just cuts it the same.
You heard somebody say it.
Declining my mom calling. I'm not sure if you heard that. Could you guys hear that?
Well, you just said it.
Well, now that I said it. Okay. I just want to know for future when my mom dials me over and over.
What if there's an emergency, Carrie?
There's always never an emergency. So she's going to be like, do you want some hot Christmas candy this year? I'm planning on making Christmas candy.
What if your mom is lying in a pool of her own viscera and the only thing she had enough strength to do was to call you on the phone?
Oh.
And you would rather talk
just
to us about
her.
hair.
I'm going to be honest with you.
Us about hair.
You're playing me on my fears. I'm going to tell you, I'm sick at heart. Honestly, every time somebody calls me, I assume somebody's died or that they're in their viscera of their own, whatever you said, that they're just laying there. This is what runs through my mind. So you're just playing on my fears. Right now, I was just trying to dust it off. I was trying to be like, it's probably not that somebody has died. It's probably, again, about the candy. I was trying to keep it light. But now I'm a little bit worried.
Yeah, Tim's trying to interrupt this podcast by you calling your mom. But wait, did you say hot Christmas candy? What the fuck is that?
Hot Christmas candy. I don't know.
It's like hot dish, only it's sweet with peppermints.
I don't
know. What the fuck is hot dish?
Hot dish?
I put a plate in a microwave?
Realize that the Midwest is a good region.
You don't know what a hot dish is? First of all, let me back up. There is no such thing as hot candy. I was mumbling and saying something weird. That's not an actual thing. But a hot dish is very much known, I think, by everybody.
Hot dish is the umbrella term for a casserole that you bring to potluck.
Oh, okay. So just call it a casserole.
No, but you call it,
it's not just a casserole.
Yeah, no, it's different.
Well, like, okay, so like, sorry, you've broken my brain. I mean, I feel like
hot dish has to be served like in a 9x16 glass bottom pan. Am I right about that, Carrie?
Yes, exclusively.
I guess a 9x16 metal pan would also do.
Maybe
if it's the 80s and we haven't had the glass pan revolution yet.
Yeah, if you're an animal, yeah. But we'll let that fly. But yes, it's in the pan as well. Continue, Tim. What are the other criteria?
I'm not sure that I can come up with any others. It is generally a dish to pass. It is served in the 9x16 pan. It's hot, obviously, as is implied by
it's in a dish. Yeah.
Thing. You probably have melted cheese on it.
Always
whether
cheese.
Cheese was necessary or not. It does have a layer of melted cheese.
Yes.
But you probably have not run it through a broiler, so the cheese has not been attractively browned. It's just melted.
You do that at the last minute. You brown that at the last minute. When you arrive at the house, you awkwardly ask if you can quickly borrow a broiler.
I think there is a more than 50% chance that at least one can of cream of mushroom soup is used in the preparation of it as well.
And if you're out, you can use cream of corn, but we don't recommend it. You should always try.
No, you should try to get the cream of mushroom. Cream of corn is an option. Golden mushroom is an option, but you really should try for that cream of mushroom.
You're, again, a monster.
Is there a cold dish?
That's just food.
It's food. Everything else, no.
Well, not all food is cold. Like,
would would you bring cold food to a potluck? Are you
mean,
rude?
Yeah, like sandwiches or like one of those gross salads that y'all like to bring to things that's got like
mayo?
Jello and Cheetos and mayonnaise in it or whatever.
Well, no. If you're bringing your Jello salad, you call it a Jello salad. You don't call it a cold dish.
No.
Okay, well, but what if you're serving like a thing of spaghetti and that's not hot dish according to your criteria?
That's just spaghetti.
No,
then.
I
Then
think
you're
that
just-
like things that are recognizably other things, like spaghetti is not hot dish.
You can't know. That's
Lasagna
another
is not
criteria.
hot
You
dish.
can't know what's in it. You can't know.
Okay,
You can't distinguish what it is just by looking at the hot dish. It has to all be a question mark. What's in this dish? I don't know until you eat it.
So it's like a swamp of leftovers. It's like, here's some rotisserie chicken and some cream of mushroom soup and noodles and whatever.
It
and
could be.
cheese.
It could be.
That sounds awfully like hot dish. I would want to see some petite frozen peas in it to really feel like it meets
to
hot
add a
dishes
veggie.
like best self.
Yeah.
But yes, I feel like
maybe you
noodles,
cube some white
rotisserie
bread.
chicken. No, now you're just being obtuse. But no, you get the rotisserie chicken, so then you don't have to cook the chicken. You just shred
Pop it in there,
you mix it up with your noodles. You mix it up with your peas. You mix it up with your the other thing, cream of mushroom soup, and maybe you sprinkle some breadcrumbs over it. But you don't have
or Ritz
cubes.
crackers, or you could put Ritz crackers.
Ritz crackers,
on the top.
Ritz crackers.
The
Just
best.
for argument's sake, what if I didn't do that? Would that be okay? Could I just eat a sandwich and
Well, I mean, you're not expected to eat the hot dish. You bring the hot dish.
Yeah, to pass. I will say though, Brennan, how regularly do you get invited to potlucks?
I don't really get invited anywhere. So,
See, and that's
feel
because
pretty
you were
good
bringing
about that.
sandwiches.
I've
You're bringing
cultivated a
How often-
lifestyle.
In
where I
general,
don't
how
have to
often
go.
do you go to parties in Minnesota?
I never have. But if you, I mean, we'll talk about this off air. I might end up in the area in the next year or so. So maybe.
like
we'll
living
get
or
some parties
visiting?
going on.
Oh, parties. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have you over for some hot dish and some salad, which also salad, just so for your edification, that can be anything that has a fruit or vegetable in it. So that could be, some of our salads are just based with whipped cream and mandarin oranges and Snicker bars. Oh, that's one of my favorites. And you call that's also a salad.
That's a Snicker bar salad.
Snicker bar salad.
That is a challenging texture to imagine.
Oh, it's so good.
The salad at my family's get-togethers, we'll be having such a thing at Thanksgiving, I'm sure, is a combination of Cool Whip, crushed pineapple, lime jello, and cottage cheese.
Yes.
Well, that's like approaching ambrosia, right?
It's a salad.
Ambrosia has marshmallows in it, if I'm not mistaken, but it is a salad.
Yeah, that's
Ambrosia
also a salad.
is a salad.
Yeah. Oh,
I grew up in California where we, for all intents and purposes, in America, invented salad. So
the thing that you have to keep in mind about California is you have access to good vegetables 12 months out of the year. We don't, so we have to make do. And when it's the depths of winter, you're like, well, y'all, I have a can of hash.
Yeah.
And I somehow have this like thing of frozen broccoli in my freezer. Do you think we can make a dish out of that? And then someone else is like, well, just throw some cream of mushroom soup on there to bind it. We'll see what we got.
Cheese and crackers, and you've got yourself there a hot dish. So we're making these, Brennan. We're going to commit you to visiting us, and there will be a potluck, and you can't bring sandwiches. That's the only requirement. We ask that you either bring a salad or a hot dish.
The only utensil you'll be permitted to eat with is a spoon.
Yes.
It's basically going to be the rule of this dinner party.
Multi-purpose utensil.
Okay.
Get excited.
Yeah, that sounds great.
He's like, I'm not coming anymore. I'm not coming to Wisconsin.
No, it just sounds like, so my boyfriend's vegan and he will make dishes that I call piles, which is just like, here's a bunch of different vegetables and grains and stuff that are just kind of slopped together in a trough, and you just kind of eat them. And it sounds like that, but
in a bowl.
Just no melted
like
cheese on vegan food though, so it's not proper.
Mush.
Yeah. I also eat piles, so I'm familiar with piles, but very different thing. But again, we'll cross that bridge when you get here, and we'll see what you come. We'll love you either way, even if you show up with a failure of a dish. We'll still accept you. But we're excited that you're coming. You can see our neck of the woods, and bring your big jacket if you get here too early in the season. So let us know.
Because you have those, so that's good to know.
Yeah, big and small jackets. My medium one's out right now. It's getting a little cool. But nevertheless, I did intend to start this podcast 20 minutes ago, and we have 26 minutes talking about salad, which I am happy about.
I feel talking about hot dish and salad is at least as important and at least as 80s.
At least
really.
as 80s. This is all fair. This is fair. And you know that is why we're here, because like I said, we're going to be talking about our bottom 5 80s movies. This was an impossible list for me, but we'll get there. I'm going to turn it to you, Brennan. What criteria did you have for this list?
Well, I mean, I should hope this would kind of be the vibe that we were going for, but it obviously had to come out between January 1st, 1980 and December 31st, 1989. I know Tim has issues with decades.
I need to start my list from scratch. Give me a moment, please.
Well, I know, Tim, don't you have issues with decades of like, it's technically...
So, okay. If I say the 80s, I mean things that have the word 80 in their name.
Uh-huh.
If I'm saying like the century or the decade or the whatever, I'm generally referring to starting with the year that ends in 1 and ending with the year that ends in 0.
Okay, got it. So we won't have issues in this one.
We won't have issues in this one, no, because the 80s are the things that have the word 80 in them to me.
They start with 198.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, and I think this is something that Tim probably bumped up against too, is that I am a person who enjoys bad movies. I enjoy a bad good movie. I enjoy getting to pick apart. I mean, I like feeling better than something. I'm a bad person. So I either enjoy just a movie that's so unhinged and separate from the rules of filmmaking that I cannot predict what's going to happen next, or something that's just so inept that I can make fun of it and have a nice time. But I excluded those from this list because that didn't feel proper. To me, being boring is one of the ultimate sins in a movie. So this is kind of a combination of inept and boring, rather than something that's kind of like a luscious good time.
Okay. And so that means you'll have no overlap with Tim, because that's his favorite genre. Or boring 80s
potentially
movies. We'll see. Tim, does that line up with you? Different? Same?
Very much. Same exact thing. Like, there are so many just delectably cheesy, stupid movies from the 80s that are wonderfully fun to watch, even though they are just total garbage. And I had an entire list of those. And as I looked at that list, I was like, you know what? No, I want my list to be movies that are painful to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So none of these are fun bad. None of these are like titter he, it's so fun to watch the shitty filmmaking or like this or that. These are like movies that I think you endure. You have to fight your way to the end of these movies. And some of them are bad and cheap and cheesy in the way that other movies are bad and cheap and cheesy. But I think boring is definitely a part of it. I think comprehensibility, at least for a couple of these, is part of it. Like, I get bogged down in trying to parse what in God's name the movie even is for at least a couple of mine.
Okay.
So it had to be movies that I just really don't like watching.
Wouldn't want to watch
also
again.
Very badly made.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's fair. And I actually had that criteria too. It's not a movie so bad it's good was kind of my criteria. I struggled a little bit because we'll get there with why that's sort of like a loose criteria for me. But this is a little bit weird one for me. Like I said, this is going to be hard for me to actually come up with a list. I couldn't think of anything. Like, usually I have like a few that like insta pop into my brain when we have a topic. And I was like, I don't have anything. So then I didn't have a strategy. I was like, what do I do? So because I started looking at lists of like worst horror movies from the 80s, and it was like, well, either I haven't seen any of these or I loved them. Like, so that didn't work for me. So then I was like, okay, Carrie, when you were a child, which movies did you hate the most? So then I'm like Googling like Old Yeller, Where the Red Fern Grows, like Fantasia. And then it's like, oh.
Noted 80s movie, Fantasia.
Exactly. I was like, crap, they're not from the 80s. So I was like, those are the only ones I could think of that I like really hated when I was a kid. And so I was like, I'm really in trouble here. So then I went to my Letterboxd and I was like, I got to get strategic about this. I got to pull some data. And then I've uncovered something, and I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I think I'm a little biased in my movie watching.
You suppose.
I just like a hair, because I searched 80s and then I searched ranked from like lowest to highest. Every single movie that I've seen in the 80s is 5 stars. I was like, the only ones that were not 5 stars are movies that Patreon supporters had me watch.
Like Society.
Like Society. Like Society. Hang on, I got to do a quick list update here. So I don't know. I just think I really like 80s movies. I don't know. I couldn't think of any that were bad. So my list is really weird. And like, so I guess what I ended up doing was if I hated it as a kid and then rewatched it as an adult and still didn't like it, that could be in a bottom 5. That's kind of what I started doing. So some of them are childhood movies that I saw, and then some of them are more recent watches. So, I don't know. So we'll see where we go from here. I'm struggle bus on this one a little bit. But
I will say it's fascinating to me that you ran into that specific problem. I would go on the record, and I'm almost confident I have gone on the record as saying the 80s is my least favorite decade of cinema.
It's
ever.
Curly Sue. It's big. It's
Curly Sue is from the 90s and bad.
It's fair. But no, the first part is fair. That's from the 90s. It's Turner and Hooch, right?
I haven't seen Turner and Hooch.
Oh.
Isn't that also from the 90s?
Probably.
I think it might be from 1990.
Probably. But you know what? Big. The movie Big.
Big is from
1980s.
1988.
It is so good.
Guarantee that is an 80s movie.
I just love it so much. So that's the only one that came to mind when I was thinking of this, and I love it. So this is going to be a disaster, just so you know.
Okay, I'm very excited.
That sounds great. And one more thing from my list,
Yes.
Because I'm making a project of watching every single slasher movie from the 1980s. This very easily could have just been a list of 5 slasher movies, and I limited myself to about.
Are you suggesting that slasher movies from the 80s are bad?
I'm suggesting that if you try to watch all of them that anybody made in the 80s, you will come across some of the worst examples of filmmaking you will ever see. Sure. But there are a lot of great ones also.
Oh, I had one other rule. No direct-to-video, because that felt like it was just shooting fish in a barrel.
Okay.
Very fair. I think I may not have followed that rule. But
I had a specific film that would have been probably my number 2 second worst of the decade, but it was direct to video, and it's like, you know what? That it's just not playing the same sport.
It's an unsporting, yeah.
All right. Well, let's kick it off. See if there's any overlap. I think the only potential is probably Brennan and I don't know. We'll see. We'll see when we get there.
I don't think so.
No.
I think there's a film that Brennan and I have definitely both seen and definitely both hated, and it's on my list. So I'm curious to see if it's on Brennan's list.
All right.
Oh, I'm really curious. Okay, I have no idea. Well, we're starting, right?
I mean, you and I have both seen tons of bad horror movies, so like there's a lot of ample opportunity for it to be.
That's true.
But yeah, I think go ahead.
All right, Brennan, you're up.
Okay, this one is my most controversial pick, unfortunately. It is this low on the list because I like it the most out of everything on my list. But the reason it's here is that it's a movie that I should love, that I sat down to watch and found myself incapable of enjoying more than a second at a time. I just had a really miserable time. I found it crushingly boring to watch, and it is from the first year of the 1980s. It's from 1980. It is a musical called Xanadu. I was expecting that a little bit.
Xanadu is the film that chiefly led me to these have to be films I don't like watching, because it is terrible and I treasure it like my child.
See, for me, I think we've talked about this before, but for me, that movie from 1980 is The Apple.
I treasure that movie like my dumb child. Xanadu is my underachieving child.
Yes, but for those who haven't seen it, Xanadu is a musical directed by Robert Greenwald. It stars Olivia Newton-John as Kira, who is one of the Greek muses, a daughter of Zeus. She comes to I didn't write this down. She's in like Venice Beach, LA kind of area, right? Like in California.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely Venice Beachy.
Yeah, so she shows up to inspire artist Sonny Malone, played by Michael Beck. He's a painter. He recreates album artwork, and he just is feeling trapped in his creativity. And she basically inspires him to open a music club type thing with former clarinetist Danny, played by Gene Kelly. And she falls in love with him along the way. But can it work? Can he be together with this mythological being of rollerblades and teased hair? It is a musical with a bunch of songs by Electric Light Orchestra, quite a few of which I like quite a bit, especially the title track Xanadu, which is an incredible piece of music. But I think that everything they try to do, I like the fact that they tried, but I find it incredibly boring. I think it is a movie that has pizzazz, but doesn't have flair. Like, it's presenting you with a lot of ideas without a lot of it just doesn't feel fun to me. Like, the idea of watching a bunch of neon ladies burst out of a mural and then do a roller skate dance sounds incredible, but they're just kind of awkwardly twirling for what feels like an eternity, and a lot of the numbers just kind of play out like that. And I really had a bad time watching this movie.
And what's the distinction between pizzazz and flair? I need to know for my own self.
Well, I'm thinking that they're throwing a lot of glitter in your face, but it's just kind of sticking in your eyes and and just kind of hurting a little bit. Like, they're not throwing it in the air and having a great time and doing something with it, or like dancing. It's just glitter, and it's just a cannon in your face.
Okay.
The comparison I would make is one that I don't know, Carrie, that you'll be able to make use of. It's the difference between the Bob Fosse number in the Netflix original film The Prom and a Bob Fosse musical.
I think you knew that wouldn't connect. I don't think it was like a question mark there in terms of that was going to connect with me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I don't know. You might have seen The Prom.
What's a Bob Fosse movie?
It's an unbelievably terrible movie starring Meryl Streep. It might have crossed your path.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Fair.
And it was a 2020 streaming movie, and that means a lot of more people watched it than would have otherwise.
Yes, obviously.
So, Tim, you kind of like this one. You're like your least favorite child. You would watch this movie.
Oh, I think Xanadu is terrible. Every word that Brennan said about it being sort of lifeless and badly executed is very true. I just think there's such a level of like gaudy tastelessness. I find it to be an excessive movie in a way that is very charming to me, and it sounds like it is just not charming to Brennan.
Yeah, and that type of thing usually appeals to me, and that's why this ended up. This is why I have such potent feelings about it. Is because whenever I feel like I should be loving a movie and I'm not, it kind of makes me mad.
I feel that. I feel that. Agreed.
Okay, good. Yeah, and it just feels kind of interminable. There's this like really long cartoon segment that doesn't work for me. There's this really long kind of battle of the bands between like different eras of music, but they both kind of sound the same, and it just goes on forever in this kind of nether space that's not really exciting to look at, and it's just not for me.
Not good. So, Tim, it's not going to be on your list, but your number 5 is probably on my list. I think it matches my number 5. What is it?
I don't imagine that's the case, but maybe you could surprise me.
All right.
So like Brennan, I made a choice that you can make a list with 5 slasher films, but that's not what you should do. Also, there's a point at which even the extraordinarily terrible slasher films still have a level of like huckster cheesiness that I kind of respond to.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really want to put a lot of slasher films on this list anyway, even though plenty of them are bad, plenty of them are unwatchable. But I will. My number 5 is my solitary slasher film. A film that I have previously reviewed on the site, although in a very cursory sort of way, many, many, many years ago. This is probably a 14 or 15-year-old review at this point. So maybe I need to revisit this film. Maybe I would respond to it better. I strongly doubt that. This is the 1984 Killer Santa slasher movie, Don't Open Till Christmas.
Oh. I thought you were going to say Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is a kind of fun, nasty movie. But no, that movie's
Silent Night, Deadly Night is kind of fun. It's bad, but it's kind of fun. Don't Open Till Christmas is not kind of fun. It's just bad.
The word you brought up earlier was incoherent, which I think is the appropriate label for that. Sorry, keep going. I
was going to say incoherent is one of the major things here. So this is, as far as I'm aware, the only film directed by Edmund Purdom, who is an actor. He actually stars in this as a Scotland Yard inspector. It is a British film. I should have led with that. It is a British slasher film. And if there's one thing we know about British cinema in the 1980s, it's that it was just completely up its own asshole. The British Department of Public Prosecutions really, really, really cracked down on content in horror. So like you could not make a British movie that was anything resembling horror adjacent that had the slightest quantity of like good gore or interesting anything. So you have this just impenetrable movie about Scotland Yard trying to stop someone who is killing people wearing Santa suits. And that gets us about as far into the plot as I think it's possible to get. It after that just becomes this kind of unbelievably dire stretch of just like scenes that don't really feed into each other. It's more just like, here's an anecdote where a Santa gets killed. Now here's Scotland Yard sort of bumblefucking around and not doing anything. Now here's another scene of a Santa getting killed. And all of these scenes are like 4 times as long as they need to be.
So there's so many Santas. Are these good Santas? Like, are they bad Santas? Do we find
good,
out?
bad, they are all the same now, to quote fellow Brit George Eliot.
Okay. Do these Santas know they're like being stalked? What? Like, what's the context of like?
Well,
why
like a Salvation Army Santa, that kind of thing, or like a Santa at the mall.
Okay, so they know they're being targeted.
You know, one of them will be like drunk in an alley, pissing and smoking cigarettes or whatever.
Yeah.
And they get hatcheted.
Most of them are just kind of whatever.
All right. It sounds kind of good.
I will say that in my 2007 is when I watched and reviewed this film. My notes from 2007 suggest that there were 10 Santas killed and 5 non-Santas killed over the course of this film's running time.
15 body count. Okay.
So a pretty substantial body count for any slasher film that does not have the words Friday the 13th in its title, I would have to say.
Yeah, but body count. Again, it's the thing of like it's not what happens in your movie; it's how it happens, and
exactly.
It is presented. It is a really dimly lit movie. It's very incoherent. I remember the kind of like Scotland Yard police procedural element of it and the whodunit element of it is just completely bungled. It doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
It's good choice, Tim. This is actually yeah.
Hmm?
This was not on my my short list of slashers, but it deserves to be exactly where it is here.
And I will say I don't quite remember how it ends. I do remember the ending feeling like it had been tacked on from some thoroughly unrelated other movie. If I recall correctly, a bomb goes off. And bombs have not been part of the plot of this movie in any capacity up till that point.
Yeah, I can't remember either because I shoved this movie out of my head, but that feels right.
Well, I've added it to my watch list because I actually love.
I think that's what the don't open. I think you like don't open until Christmas, and the thing that you're not supposed to open until Christmas turns out to be this bomb. But I don't remember who opens it or anything.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like something. And that's the danger here of Carrie of what you just said is that I'm worried that every single movie we're going to put on this list is going to encourage someone on the Discord to watch.
They will.
Because when you're describing a bad movie, it always sounds more intriguing than it is.
I agree.
Although everyone on the Discord should go watch Xanadu.
Yes. Watch Xanadu, watch Bad Santa. Or wait, what was it called?
No, do not watch Don't
open till Christmas. All right.
Listen to the title. Don't do it.
Don't do it. All right. Well, I'm going to jump to my number 5, which I also do not recommend before Christmas either. This is one of the most sad, tragic movies of my childhood. I saw it as a kid. Just absolutely hated it. I might have even had like a stint in therapy after I saw this. I don't know. It's kind of like blurry, but I know I did not recover well from this movie. It's traumatic. It's supposed to be a story about friendship, but ends up being a story about death and murder and people going after the innocent. And I was like, it's so bad. So then my mom was like, I don't know how you didn't like that movie. So I tried to give it another go and watched it again with the kids. Equally distressing. Took another stint in therapy after watching this. And this is frickin' 1982 E.T. I hate this movie. So Tim's face is like he's leaving. He's not
He's certainly exited his conversation.
I'm not going to contribute to this conversation.
Fine.
No good will come.
No good will come. I think this movie is so sad, and it made me get a tummy ache when I was a kid. It is
so sad. Sad is a good quality for art to be.
Yeah, but I didn't like the way that E.T. looked even. Like, his face was sort of, like, distressing to me, and I was kind of, as a kid, I was like, gosh, this guy's neck. I didn't love the way that his neck sort of accordioned up and down. It just like the unknowns of what this alien could do physically, just sort of like, ugh. It gave me like a little bit of like again, just sort of like an overall tummy ache. And then when he gets like, when he turns into the dog turd at the end, like,
yes, he does. He does indeed. It's objectively, that is the correct description. Like,
yeah,
I have no faults with that.
Yeah. And how traumatizing is that, both for a kid? And then I thought, like,
tremendously,
exactly.
Traumatizing is good for art.
This is not good for art.
It provokes a reaction.
Yeah, like nausea. I had nausea for days. Like when I was a kid, I used to get nervous tummy aches.
Carrie,
I had one for days.
I'm rewatching the films of Miyazaki right now. I'm burning my way through all of Studio Ghibli on the way up to the Miyazaki. So this very day that we are recording this episode, I did a double feature of Grave of the Fireflies and My Neighbor Totoro, both movies that I know you love desperately.
What would you? I don't even really know why
and like,
you'd make that
there's
choice.
something to me very gratifying and enriching to my humanity about sitting through Grave of the Fireflies and being like, yep, that movie feels like I just
pain.
had acid poured onto my face for 90 minutes. And that's a
that?
good feeling that reconnects me with my own humanity.
So to explain the psychology. I need to understand the psychology of this. You would knowingly... What's the outcome? So you would knowingly give yourself the most traumatic experience you could possibly have.
Well, it's not nearly as traumatic the second time.
I think it's equally
traumatic. And watching a movie is not the most traumatic. Living through the events of Grave of the Fireflies would have been a great deal more traumatic than watching it.
Yeah, but when it feels like you're there when you're
watching it. But you're not,
it,
because it's a cartoon.
Yeah, but your heart is there. And then it's like, it's just starved to death just like they were. And it's so sad. Well, I just could not do that. But does it make you feel better? How do you feel after you watch it?
It makes me feel nourished in my soul.
So you feel better after watching.
I didn't say I feel better. Better is a strange word. I felt better watching Totoro immediately after Grave of the Fireflies.
So that was the recovery. It was like, I'm going to devastate my heart and then I'm going to build it back up again with that giant
with the giant fluff.
That almost made my list. I didn't want to like truly break your heart. That was like number 7 for me on this.
If you'd had both E.T. and Totoro, I might have had to dial off
I had to pull it off because I wanted you to stay. But
okay.
Brennan, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I think you bring a great deal of empathy to the movies that you watch, and you have a fear of feeling bad. And I think that's a totally valid emotion. You just, you got to live with the set of emotions and reactions that you have. And that's the thing that you tend to conflate with bad. And I was worried your movies, your whole list is just going to be movies that made you cry a little bit.
Yeah, it might. No.
But, we all have our own definitions of things. I will say I am not as keen to experience such a raw amount, like a raw film like that, I think, as much as Tim is, but I do get it. Like watching a tearjerker can be a very cathartic experience. Like I do sometimes, if I'm like, I don't know if I'm a bottle up person, but I definitely like stress will build up in my body. And sometimes I need to watch something that just purges me and just kind of scrubs out my inside, like with steel wool, and just is a tragedy, and I cry a whole bunch, and then I do feel better after that.
Oh, same. Absolutely. Like I use the ending of E.T. specifically to do that. Like when I need to cry, or sometimes it actually works just to describe the ending of E.T. I start crying.
Yeah. Aww. I've been like fighting back tears just talking about it. I'm like, I will not cry on this episode, but even just thinking about it makes me like well up. And I think, I think I just do it differently. I don't know how I do it, but it's not to watch sad stuff. I think I go back to like, I'm just going to watch Indiana Jones. I'm going to watch that over and over.
Comfort watches.
Comfort food, yeah. Because if something really bad, I'm curious your answer to this, if it'll be opposite from mine. If let's say something really tragic happened to both of you, like really sad. Let's say, your sibling got hit by a train. Like that's not ideal. And I came up to you. Would you want me to be like, how are you doing, Brennan? Or would you want me to be like, Tim, like, would you want me to be funny and weird and not even bring it up and like avoidance? Like, would you rather have me be like, hey, here's a bagel. Like, you want to hang out? Like, and not talk about it. What's your processing?
I would almost say that my process would be that I would want you to make a joke about how at least the trains were running on time.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, gallows humor.
Okay.
Gallows humor is absolutely how I cope with traumatic
Interesting.
events.
So you'd want me to address it, but with something
I'd
very
want you to
dark
go head on
sensitive.
and seem like you were trying to diminish its importance. Is what would
Okay.
make me feel best.
Okay, good to know. Brennan, what about you?
Yeah, I would actually switch between Tim's thing and both of the options you presented. Like, I think I need all three of those things. So, like, to directly address it, to avoid it, and to diminish it with humor at different times.
Okay.
So it's
A
complicated.
sprinkle of all. Yeah. Yeah, because I don't want you to ever. You'd think the opposite. I don't want you to ever bring it up to me ever. I don't.
Oh no, that's exactly what I would assume.
Yeah. Oh,
from
is
you.
it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I would have bet money on that being your response.
Oh.
Oh, for sure.
Well, never mind. I'm paper thin here. I'm paper thin. Yeah, I just am like, let's just vault that away and never speak of it again. I had it such an embarrassment. Speaking of haircuts from earlier, I knew that the lady that cuts my hair, I knew her dog had passed. And so I was like, what do? I don't want to seem insensitive. And so do I like not say anything, or do I say something with a potential bad outcome of me saying something? So I was like teetering on that line. So got there and I was like, nope, not going to mention anything. I'm just going to blow past it, try to get out of here. And then towards the end, right as she was doing some feathering back there, and she like brings up the dog. And I was just like, I am not prepared for this. Like, I wasn't emotionally prepared for her to bring up the dog. She's sort of like void of disappearance. It's really healthy. I just stuff it away until, maybe like once a year it bubbles over. But Brennan is the reason I had to do a last minute tweak too here at number 4, because Brennan reminded me of one of the worst experiences of my life. I just didn't know it was from the 80s. I'd forgotten it was from the 80s. But thank you to Patreon supporter Gavin, who gave me like the biggest pile of flaming garbage that I've ever watched. Like, it's definitely in the top 5 worst movies I've ever seen. And this is 1989's Society. I don't know how I missed this. This was from the 90s. I probably didn't review it on Letterboxd. This is why I didn't show up, because I was so angry after I saw it, because it was so tragically bad. But for those of you who missed that episode, I can't tell you about what it's about. I just remember it was this family and this guy. Nothing about it makes sense. And the guy is like a part of this family. And then it ends up being, he doesn't realize that like his family is like aliens maybe, and then he doesn't realize his family's all sleeping with each other, and then he's like, well, that's weird, but then it's because they're really aliens. It was literally top 5 worst nights of my life, worst experiences of my life. So I feel a little guilty that E.T. is below it's below that one, or is right
below
next.
Means it's better.
That's true.
So.
That's true. Is right next to that one. I feel bad. There's a far gap between E.T. and Society as far as how bad they were. But I need more time to process, like, is Society number 1? I don't even know. That movie was just pure garbage. So it's not even one of those ones where you're like, oh, this is so bad it's good. It was just so bad it was bad. It was just a terrible experience. So that's 1989's Society.
So I'm curious if you would not mind sharing, what was the film that got removed from your list to make room for Society?
I had to remove, hang on. I had to remove Ran from 1985.
Okay.
I think that was probably the right choice. Although
I will be curious if any of the films in your top 5 are not movies that I love.
I think so. I'm
Okay,
getting there.
because right now you're 3 for 3 on movies that I love.
That you love.
Maybe do I love Society? I don't know. I got a real fucking kick out of it.
Oh, it's so weird. Okay. Never watch it, despite what Tim has said. So I escaped having Ran on there, because again, Ran, not great, but when your competition.
It's pronounced Ron.
Oh yeah, what is it? Ron.
I'm
from the Midwest. It's Ran. So that got skipped. So we'll move that down to number 6. And then I think, Brennan, that's to your number 3.
Yeah, it sure is.
Are we done? Are we moving past the trauma I'm currently living through?
Okay. What I would say about Society, I've not seen it. It is high on my list of 80s movies that I do need to catch up with. But I would say it is a Brian Yuzna movie, if I recall correctly. And I would say probably the worst movie he has made. I would still love with my entire heart. Like he's got a very 80s ooey gooey sensibility that
It's
I
does.
tend
like
to
literally
respond to.
gooey.
Society's
This
awfully
movie-
ooey gooey
It's
too.
so gooey. There's like people that are all like connected, like weirdly connected, like more than one person. They're all just kind of
Yeah, it sounds hot.
connected. I don't know, like not in a good way though. Like not. I don't know. Anyway, you watch it, Brennan. You watch it. And tell us.
What's your
I
number
will.
3, Brennan?
What's your
Yeah,
number
my number 3. We're also going to the kind of the tawdry gutters of Europe for my choice. It is a I did tease 1.5 slashers. This one is a kind of a late Italian giallo.
Okay.
So that's what I've chosen here. It is a 1983 movie directed by I think you pronounce it Cesare Cannavaro. It is called Killing of the Flesh, which, as any giallo movie has, it is a great title. This is one of the ones where if I describe it, you're gonna think you want to watch it, and just don't believe your heart. But yeah, it's about family members and their lovers who gather at an old hotel after the death of an uncle. They all fuck a whole bunch. Not like, I don't believe there's any incest, but it's basically an orgy that a family has put together. And then they discover that one of their number has been murdered. The police will not let them leave this hotel, so they just continue to fuck while they are waiting. It is essentially a softcore movie masquerading as a giallo. It is not. There's like 2 kills, and then there's a third kill. The third kill is discovered in the final minute of the movie, and that is also the same minute where you learn that this character has existed in the first place. It is a very bad giallo. It's underbaked. The kills are mostly off screen. It just doesn't deliver any sort of suspense or style, and it also sucks as a softcore. I mean,
That was my question.
It's a lot of women disporting in the altogether, and that's not something that I particularly care about viscerally. So if that's something you like, then it might have something, but it did seem like very workmanlike hack work. Lots of it's like the opening credits of Elm Street 5, like lots of close-ups of flesh where it's unclear of what part of the body you're even looking at, and it's just kind of writhing, but not in a suggestive or sensual way. It's clearly trying to be, and then there were none, but it just kind of is. And then there was 80% of the cast, and they had boring sex for 90 minutes.
What is disporting though?
What?
You said that the ladies are disporting with each other?
No, they're just like dancing around and naked,
okay.
just like having a good time.
Dancing around. Okay. I like the way that you just danced. It's good to know what that would.
Thank you.
Dancing around.
I think the most interesting thing about this movie to me was the fact that it starred, one of the people in it is Moana Pazzi, who's a very famous Italian porn star from that period. And she is in fact so famous, and her name is spelled like the Disney princess Moana. She is so famous that they had to release that Disney movie as Oceana in Italy. So it was fun to see her do her thing. I mean, it's a movie that's so boring that there's a shot of a character playing solitaire, and I was jealous of him.
I have not seen this film, but I have to say you were dead on about one thing, Brennan. You did describe it in a way that makes me want to see it.
I know. Tim was at your face. He was like, "Oh,
I'm
Googling
curious.
it." I can tell you're Googling because his eyes are kind of like widening and stuff. I can tell he's getting excited.
Well, you know what? Let me sell it further. The 2 best scenes. One of them, there is a woman who flirts with the horse by reminding it that she used to ride it commando. And there is a scene because, like any movie of this vein, it's going to be deeply misogynistic.
Of course.
But there's a scene where that gets pushed so far that it's kind of hilarious. So there's a guy performing cunnilingus on a woman. Another man walks up, removes his head from her pedendum, tells the woman to stand up, slaps her, and walks away.
Okay.
You keep using all these words. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't know what a pedendum is either.
We already know that you failed like college biology because you didn't know how sex works.
You know what a pedendum is, Tim? Tell me what a
pedendum.
Pedendum?
Mm-hmm.
What's a pedendum?
Did I lose you at cunnilingus? Because I feel like you've had
we've had some struggles with that
before.
one before, but I think I've locked it in. But pedendum is not with me. No, what is that?
Just the external genitalia.
Is that a technical term or like a millennial term or like a Gen Z?
It is a
term?
technical term.
It's a technical term.
It's not like the Gen Z TikTokers
It's
are
not on the
talking about.
TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah.
TikTokers are just throwing.
Perhaps, Carrie, you are familiar with the phrase "pulling your pud."
I have not heard that phrase.
Well, the pud in "pulling your pud" and pudendum are the same. Pud is short for pudendum.
I actually did not put that together. That's very interesting because I just always
assume.
I
mean, I don't actually know that. I just assume.
Yeah.
I'm
I
still
don't know.
gonna
Pud
Google
to me
it,
just
then.
felt like a cow's cud and just kind of like a general like silly putty. Like it all kind of worked together for me.
All right. Well, this one's for sure going on my watch list. Maybe even this Christmas, maybe Thanksgiving, I could show it to the family.
Yeah, it is about a family reunion.
All right.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'll come in at my number 3 to walk us out.
Wait, isn't
of
it
that
Tim's
one.
turn?
What about my number 3?
I'm sorry, I got nervous because now I'm thinking about Pud and I'm like Googling it at the same time because I'm still unclear. So you go. I'm going to Google that, get a virus on my computer.
Be sure that you have safe search on before you Google pudendum.
Pudendum. Okay.
So this is a film. When I said that I think there was one that maybe you and I possibly might overlap on, Brennan, it was actually this one. So I'm putting myself out there. This is a film that I watched some years ago. I'm drawing a blank on exactly when. It was during one of my various summers of blood, if I'm not mistaken. And this is a Canadian horror film, which I typically view as being a very exciting, promising sign. Canada horror films tend to be, I think, at least interesting. And I guess this one is interesting in that it is not following any sort of formula, though part of what that means is that it is, I think, quite literally impossible to tell what the story is. And this is 1983's Skullduggery, which is part of the overall like anti-D&D satanic panic. It's basically about a tabletop gaming group where one of the gamers, and he might be the dungeon master, I can't remember, it's been a long time since this movie, is like somehow cursed, and the game like infects his mind and drives him insane so that he goes around killing people because of the evil magic within the game. And that's as far as I think I can get on a plot synopsis, because there is a ton of just random, like, phantasmagorical imagery here. It is clearly a film that thinks that it's an art film. Like just this director of this film, whose name I have in front of me, Ota Richter, very obviously thought this was like Bergman-esque or something. Like this is some sort of very symbolically laden. The plot is sort of happening on the edges, sort of Last Year at Marion Bad style. We are so taken by the weird potency of this fantasy imagery that we sort of will be swept into the psychology of these characters. And that doesn't happen like at all. Like this is just completely goddamn incoherent. And I literally had to reread my review of this film. I knew I hated it, but like I couldn't remember why I hated it because the actual content of it was so, it just slipped off of my brain. So I reviewed this film in 2013, so 10 years ago. And there's like, I'm seeing plot points about like people dressed in costumes, and apparently there's like witchery and like a coven, and I don't even know what. Anyway, it is just mind melting. This film has also maybe the worst theme song of the 1980s.
Oh yeah, it's that like a quasi Bond song almost.
Yes, and it's trying to make the word skullduggery like rhythmic, and it's like skullduggery, skullduggery, and it's painful. It hurts my ears and now my throat.
Yeah, that's a movie. That is a movie that's impossible to process. It's like an unchewed corn kernel. You just have to shit it out of the back of your brain, because there's nothing to chew on. It's just this perfectly smooth object that is just totally impenetrable. And I can't remember anything about it either, because who could? I will say it's not on my list, but if I was doing just slashers, it would be my number 3 on the list.
Gotcha.
I
See, I don't even remember it being a slasher. I just remember it being like a slurry of weird horror imagery.
Yeah, it is one facet of the slurry is slasher-esque, which is why it's one of the ones that I watched for my list.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But so that's number 3, and actually Killing of the Flesh would be number 4 on my slasher list, but it's the only one that felt properly enough not a slasher to include elsewhere on my list.
Makes sense. Well, then I will consider it a moral victory or a moral overlap of our list.
Yes. And we both had it at number 3, technically. So that works for me. Anyway, any more on that, or are we moving to Carrie?
I don't remember enough about it to say any more on it.
I don't remember anything that you actually just said. I just got down a rabbit hole on Google Image that I can't come out of. And
I told you to leave safe search on, Carrie. I said that in those exact words.
Don't even know. I'm still confused. There's just so many places, and I just don't. I'm going to have to check in with you after this because it's still not clear to me. But I'm glad that movie was bad that you just talked about. It sounded really bad. But I got another bad one.
Do we need to go to break now, or do you think you can make it through your number 3?
I don't know. I just have so many questions. No, I think I can make it through. And this one's a quickie because we've all seen this together, or many of us have seen it together, because this is one that we watched at a watch party, and it was so bad. It was so bad. A movie club watch party, and this one is from 1988. This is what I think is intended to be a cute alien, maybe. I don't really know, but he comes down to Earth. Not everybody's cute and wanting good for Earth, but this little guy I think is. And this is Mac and Me. And this is really bad. Like, the only thing that I enjoyed about watching this movie was chatting our way through it. Like, because we were all together and because we were all just like mocking the entire thing. I wondered if it was a so bad it's good. But I realized had I watched this alone for the first time, it would have been a so bad it's bad. Like, I would not have enjoyed this just watching this by myself. I would not have gotten pleasure of watching Mac and Me by myself. The only pleasure I derived from it was like laughing at everybody's funniness. Sure. So this is a doozy. I would only encourage people to watch this if you're watching this for like a group watch. Never watch it alone. That's Mac and Me.
Yeah, and I have actually watched this at least 3 times in a group setting, and it works very well.
It works as a group.
For that capacity.
But yes, never alone.
When you said it was a 1980s horribly bad movie that we did at a watch party, I thought you were going to say it was The Blue Lagoon.
What?
Actually.
No, that's in like my top 10 of all time.
Reevaluate that.
I mean, not top 10, but it's not a bad movie.
Do you think perhaps your hatred of E.T. has spilled over into Mac and Me because it is such a blatant
I'm at least
E.T.?
Grateful that Mac and Me is ranked worse than E.T. That would have been a tough one to chew on.
Maybe that's what it is. I think it's a tie,
if you're like, well, Mac and Me is like the good version of E.T., I don't know how I would have been able to cope with that.
Mac looks like the stepbrother of E.T. Like, they are both not great. I wouldn't say they're both like cute. Like, I think they're trying to make them cute aliens, but I don't find
they certainly are. Like, Mac is merely awful, but his parents look like sex dolls that have had like horns glued on.
Yes.
So.
Yes, I would agree with that. So made my list. Still glad I saw it, but still made my list. I think that takes us
that's very, very terrible. Although I will say I think it's so bad it's good. I had it, in fact, as on my long list. And I was like, I've watched it too many times. I get a kick out of how bad it is, so I couldn't put it on my list.
All right. Well, we're going to head to a break, but before we head to our break, you might be wondering about ways to support the show. You can join Patreon and give us these exciting movies that we're talking about today, many of them that we're talking about today. Get exclusive content, make us watch a movie, all from our site. Really, really appreciate always supporting there. Celebrating our anniversaries with us this month. Actually, it's Brennan. Brennan's celebrating. Happy anniversary, Brennan.
Hey, thank you.
Jack Rosen.
Thank you for supporting the show. Matt
Dabari, XY, Laurel Hose, also Mandy Albert, and Kellison Dale. We thank you guys so much for your support. And I'm going to throw you guys off here a little bit. I had to reach deep, extra deep, actually, into Tim's sack this week. I got a twofer. I got two for you. And a preemptive apology, because Rob's always like, are you always checking the alternate ending email, and I'm always like, of course I am. I'm always checking it.
How stale are these Tim Sachs requests,
I'm
Carrie?
not gonna. One of them has like a sort of thing that might indicate a date at which it was sent, so I'm just gonna not.
I mean, generally
say
emails
that part.
do have that feature.
I know. I'm gonna try and make it date agnostic, but I'm gonna jump in here. So. The first one, hi all, not sure if you're still grabbing out of his sack or not, but I have a question I figure would be a good one for Tim. Recently, the Hollywood Reporter, maybe this is dating it. Recently, the Hollywood Reporter dropped a list of their choice of the 100 best movies of all time, had an amount that made me raise an eyebrow asking, really? An amount that I agreed with, and an amount that led to a growing of my read list. I wanted to ask Tim if he was making a 5 to 10 film ballot for this and what would be his picks. And as a side ask, since we're in the month of Halloween, this is not.
That's not that bad.
It's
That was.
gonna get worse.
I assume you mean Halloween 2020.
This wasn't the one I was worried about. I just realized. And as a side ask, since we're in the month of Halloween, to whomever is the co-host of this episode, what are your favorite works of horror literature? Tim can answer this one too.
Ooh.
So that's a good one. So Tim, first, what are you thinking about your film ballot?
I am perplexed, Carrie, why you thought that wasn't one I was going to need time to think about.
I don't know. No, you can just answer.
I don't have an answer to that. Come back to me next
No,
episode.
it's just, are you planning on making one? Are you? I wanted to ask Tim.
I was not aware that such a ballot situation existed, so
you're going to check it out after this.
I need to. I will say, those of you who follow me on Letterboxd, I did make what would have been my Sight and Sound top 10 if I had contributed a Sight and Sound top 10, which of course I did not, because I'm not even small potatoes. I'm like the dirt that the potatoes are growing in. But
you're potatoes in a hot dish.
I am hot dish potatoes. I am frozen hash browns. I am Idaho, and I'm Idaho and instant potatoes. But no, so I did put on Letterboxd what would have been my list if the Sight and Sound people had remembered me. And that list consisted of 10 silent films because I am an asshole.
That's probably why they didn't call you too. That's probably why. But on the flip side of that, also, what is your favorite work of horror literature? Do you guys have any?
I have a couple I can throw out.
So I'm literature that's about horror, or literature that is like in the horror genre, I guess, because I feel like I got a little lost at that point because I was so flummoxed by the 5 films that you didn't seem fit to warn me about in advance.
Sorry.
I think it was horror genre.
Yeah, horror genre.
Okay.
Any favorites, Brennan?
Yeah. Well, I would throw out. My favorite book. This is one of those soul scrubbing books. It's really bleak. It's Scott Smith's The Ruins. That was made into a movie that's okay, but don't let the movie.
That is a generous assessment of the movie.
Yeah, but it is an incredible book. It will scour your insides. I also love Richard Matheson. I mean, I Am Legend is obviously great. Tim and I talked about the short story Dance of the Dead when we talked about the Masters of Horror episode adapted from that short story. That's a great short story. I don't know. I am a big Dean Koontz fan, and I know that not everybody is. People tend to prefer King over Koontz, but his book Phantoms, which is adapted into a terrible movie, I find that a very enjoyable kind of popcorn horror read.
Okay, Tim, what about you?
You know, for as much as I consume horror cinema, I don't really consume horror literature all that much. I will say I've read a lot of King, and I've enjoyed plenty of it. It's good, beachy, fun to read, but I wouldn't say that any of it's like, oh my God, this is great. I can certainly come up with some horror short stories that really, really get me where I live. And you know, I'm a big fan of the sort of 20s, 30s, 40s, I guess really 20s, 30s era of like weird tales. The chief name of which would certainly be H.P. Lovecraft, and there's a lot of H.P. Lovecraft short fiction that I'm a huge fan of. With probably my favorite being The Color Out of Space, which has been turned into a couple movies, one under that title and a couple not. Like all Lovecraft, it's basically not adaptable, so don't bother with any of the movies. I'm also I'm a fan of the Shadow over Innsmouth as well. But there's quite a bit of his stuff I like. But I also want to co-sign Matheson. Is just a terrific writer and not one of the most notorious racists of the 20th century. So that probably helps.
That is nice. Also, I'd like to throw out, I mean, these are really obvious choices, but Ira Levin is a really, really terrific writer, and Rosemary's Baby, the book, it is a very slight, easy read. I mean, not easy, but it's short. It's really short, but it is really impactful.
Okay.
And I think Thomas Harris can get a little too florid at times, but Silence of the Lambs is a terrific book.
Silence of the Lambs is definitely Thomas Harris's best book, and even then, I think the movie's better.
That one I could agree with. Oh, I will also throw out another movie, or a book that was adapted into a movie that's very good, is The Fan by Bob Randall. That's The Fan, the Lauren Bacall, Michael Biehn, The Fan. That's a epistolary horror novel that's really fun.
I've never read it, but people have an extremely high opinion of the Exorcist novel.
Yeah, that's one where I'd say I enjoy the movie more than the book, but
Okay.
I think they're reasonably comparable.
Well, I've added a lot to my list. The last horror / scary book that I read was from R.L. Stein. And
He's got some good stuff.
He's got some good stuff. I used to really like him. I'm trying to sell my kids on him right now, but I had moved away from him. But I like a good horror, mystery, scary book. So I'm going to add a couple of those to my list. Those sound good. Got another question for you, and this one's a little more or less pressure. I don't know, however you want to look at it. Hi, alternate ending. I want to preface my question with a comment regarding the discussion of cottage cheese. These are all dating. These are all dating, these questions.
I'm waiting for the one where you talk about, like, as we bid farewell to President Obama.
I know, that's the third one. Discussion of cottage cheese and lasagna. In Iceland, where I live, it is not uncommon to use cottage cheese in pasta dishes or what do we call them? Hot dishes, especially lasagna. Personally, I'm not a big fan of cottage cheese, in lasagna, but I did find it a little strange how the very idea seemed to induce some kind of ontological shock with Tim and the other person that was on. His name was Zev. It was a long time ago. Which leads to my question. What is the most appetizing food you've seen in film versus vice versa, which is what is the least appetizing you've seen on film? Least appetizing food you've seen on film. Best regards, Helvath. Anything's popped to mind? Most appetizing. Let's start with most appetizing that you want.
Well, there's definitely the classic list of good movies about food, which would include Babette's Feast, Big Night. I would say I Am Love, the film like where Luca Guadagnino sort of broke big. But if I had to pick a dish, I haven't seen Chef. Actually,
it's terrible. I was just joking.
Okay. But I mean, is the food good though? The food could be good. Like Big Night's not very good, but the food is good.
Some of the food is good in Chef.
Okay. If I had to pick a single dish,
single one,
I'm going to go just so cliched for me. The ratatouille in Ratatouille.
Oh, the soup. You want some of that?
That little like beautiful stack of like finely sliced zucchinis and squashes and whatnot.
Oh.
That beautiful little cylinder of ratatouille.
Interesting. Brennan, anything jump for you?
Well, I would like to bite into a cartoon turkey leg of any distinction. That is the most delicious thing that has ever been on screen in multiple different titles. But also, I think The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe really does sell Turkish delight as
which takes some doing.
It does.
Okay,
and Paddington sells marmalade, which I also don't like. So that's another one.
That's another one. Okay, for me, immediate mind went to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. When I was a kid, wanted nothing more than to be Augustus Gloop or whatever, and like just Gloop, and I just wanted to eat my way out of that place. I wanted to lick that paper. I wanted to eat those mushrooms. I wanted to snozberry. I just wanted all that in my face. I just was so like mesmerized by all that food. That's my number one. On the flip side, what's the least appetizing, worst food you've seen on screen?
You know, I think there is a cheat way to answer this, which is to look for the film where like a kid is in a cafeteria and the cafeteria lady dumps some sort of indistinct looking gray blob on his tray. I think it's not fair if the point is that it looks gross. I think the point is that it needs to be somewhat appealing like the movie thinks that it's appealing and it's not. And that's tough for me to come up with anything, but I will say this is really specific in a weird idiosyncratic way. There is a scene in the movie Braveheart where William Wallace has killed one of the various Scottish lords that he's getting his revenge on and like shoved his bodies in the rafters over a banquet table. And one of the other Scottish lords is ripped up off a chunk of very tasty looking bread and is about to bite into it, and blood like starts dripping right onto the bread. And for whatever reason, and maybe it's because I'm a huge bread eater, that just turns my stomach enormously. Just the thought of like, ew, eating bloody bread just sounds like nightmarishly gross. So I'm gonna go with that, even though that's like kind of a really stupid answer to this question.
That's all right. Brennan, what about you?
I had one that I picked, but you actually reminded me, Tim, of the custard in Dead Alive / Brain Dead. Also, that the mom's face kind of sloughs off into, which is disgusting. But I was trying to think along the same lines of something that the movie thinks is appetizing, and
right, because like in Dead Alive, that's a gag. Like it's meant to be gross.
Yeah, the farthest I could get was that some characters in the movie find it appetizing, and that would be the food that will turn you into a vegetable in Troll 2, which is just all these delicious like cornbreads and cakes and stuff that are covered in this kind of pale green frosting, and it looks despicably disgusting, and only the child recognizes this. But yeah, it's gross.
I'm gonna trump both of you, and you're gonna agree with me. Worst food scene that I've ever experienced was in American Pie. With the
where he fucks the pie?
No, with the pubes on the pizza.
My recollection of American Pie is not strong enough to know what you're talking about.
Oh
if you're
my
not talking about the
gosh.
scene where he fucks the pie.
This might not be the same movie. Okay. Oh my gosh. There's a guy with red
It
hair.
sounds like one of the sequels.
There is a guy with red hair. They sprinkle pubes on a piece of pizza and they make him eat it. Do you guys remember
no,
this?
I'm not going to say that's not. Oh, Brennan is apparently saying it's not.
Is it She's All That?
Unfortunately, deeply familiar with the American Pie movies. I do like the main franchise, and that doesn't sound familiar to me. Stifler does eat a piece of dog poop in American Wedding.
That's fine.
And I'm sure pubes get blown by a fan at some... Oh, pubes end up on the wedding cake in that movie also. That's the only pube thing I can remember.
That's true. These get sprinkled. I can picture the guy's face.
You are referring, Carrie, to She's All That.
Oh, She's All That. It came to me as I She's All That. Do you remember this scene? And he has to eat it. And it's not even like one pube. It's like the guy, they're fresh. They're fresh pubes. He reaches into his pants and like literally pulls out a handful of freshly cut pubes and like sprinkles them on there like pepper, and he has to eat it. And it is sending my gag reflex off right now just thinking about it.
He's eating his own pubes?
No, he's eating somebody else's
less
pubes.
gross.
No, he's eating somebody else's pubes.
Okay.
Oh, and they're dark and like curly. And,
I have not seen She's All That. For that.
Yeah, me neither.
Oh my gosh. Add that to your watch list. That's going to be your favorite movie.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I
have seen He's All That, which Netflix made 2 years ago, which is probably a mistake.
Probably a mistake.
I've only seen that one.
This other one is much better. It's much better, but that is the worst. So now that my stomach is turning for other reasons, I'll rather thank you for your question. If you guys have questions just like this one, you can submit those to contact.
Maybe not just like this one.
Don't ask this again. In the spirit of this, you can submit those to contact@alternateending.com, and there is only a 30 to 120 day wait in getting an answer to those questions. We also want to thank our listeners who support our show and make their Amazon purchases through our site. Doing it is easy. Just go to alternateending.com and click on the banner and seamlessly go about your purchases. People are out there in full form. People are going out, getting the complete series of Babylon 5. Pretty intense.
Okay.
Pretty intense. That could be you, Tim.
Nice.
Could be your mom, hopefully. I think you'd like that gift. People are still getting tea. That's still you, Tim. I'm really glad that you're staying hydrated. People are getting lots of Dickies, which I know is something you love,
Tell me
Tim.
about it.
You wear Dickies all the time, don't you?
What?
You have Dickies all the time.
I last night, man, I don't even want to talk about it.
Aren't you wearing a Dickie right now?
I mean, I'm not wearing it, no.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe I don't know what a Dickie is, but I love Dickies.
Well, I'm just referring to male genitalia.
I was referring to a
the
shirt.
Pudendum, if you will.
The Pudendum. Don't take me back down that rabbit hole. The somebody is also getting tools for life. It's a book. Be useful. 7 tools for life. I could definitely use the second read of that if you want to send it my way. People are getting lots of toilet paper. People getting Grey Poupon. Man, that's the fancy stuff. People are really living large right now on their mustards. Peanut butter. People are doing that. I've been stocking up on that as well. Lots of technology. People are really ramping up on their chargers, their USBs, lots of tech probably going into the holidays. And then somebody is out there watching Wonder Woman, Earth 1, Volume 2. It's a book. Is that you too?
Oh, okay. You can watch a book. It's less interesting, but
slightly less.
You can look at a book, maybe.
Yeah.
Somebody went full in and got Scott Pilgrim's 20th anniversary hardcover box set. And that was a doozy of a purchase. So hopefully somebody got it as a gift or something like that, because it's a big one. Have you guys read that?
Not that particular edition, but I've read the comics, yeah.
Okay. Well,
they're very good.
Geez. Yeah, everyone's getting ready for the holidays here. So thank you again for all of your purchases. So when we get back, we'll be going through our number 1 and number 2 worst movies from the 80s. And welcome back. We've got our 1 and 2 left for our bottom 5 80s movies. Brennan, going to kick it to you for your number 2.
Okay, I said I was limiting slashers, but I'm not limiting horror. This is the latest entry. It's from 1988, latest on my list. It's got a great title, a terrific title. It's called Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bowl-o-rama. I know that title is going to make you want to watch it, but it was directed by David Dakota, one of the least exciting filmmakers out there as far as watching the movies.
Vigorously hard disagree.
Really?
I find he is one of our auteurs.
I mean,
not one of our great auteurs,
80s.
but he is one of our auteurs. Oh, he is still with us. He is still making movies. I'm saying maybe he was an auteur in the 80s, but the movies he's been making these days, it's like it's very I'd rather watch a documentary about how they made any of these movies, because he'll like scrape together $3,000, take some dude's shirts off, make a movie in 24 hours. And this is what I'm calling his auteurist stamp. If you are watching a David Dakota film, there will be a scene where for no apparent reason some twinks take their shirts off and like flex their muscles and then put their shirts back on. And that will not be plot specific, but it will happen multiple times. And that is a stamp. That's as much a stamp as Hitchcock having blondes.
It is. But speaking as someone who has sat through 1313 Bigfoot Island, it's boring. And that is a sin.
My partner and I just made an agreement like 3 or 4 days ago that when I binge the entire 1313 series, he wants to watch at least some of them with me.
Well, your partner has good taste, so he's going to back out of that like 30% through the first one.
My partner has seen David Dakota films that I have not seen. He has seen
like the Brotherhood?
No, he has seen D.B. Cooper versus Bigfoot, which I haven't seen.
Okay. I don't know, but the 1313 are just, they will suck the life out of you.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Anyway, Sorority Babes and Slimeball Bowl-o-rama is before his kind of like homoerotic softcore movies period. This is very much a sorority sisters spank fest kind of movie. But it's about the world's smallest sorority doing an initiation. There's like 3 sisters and 2 pledges. They have to steal a trophy from the local bowling alley and thus unleash an imp that has been trapped in the trophy. And the imp grants wishes, obviously. So kind of general mayhem ensues. Unfortunately, you cannot see it because they brought one light to set, and it is very dark. My theory is that the owners of the bowling alley didn't know they were filming a movie in there, so they had to keep the lights off so nobody would notice and kick them out. The imp actually looks okay. It's like Mac and Me level kind of puppetry going on, probably. It's got nice eyebrows, but it is brain-twistingly boring. Again, another one like Killing of the Flesh, where if you like boobs more than I do, maybe it'll do something for you, but I don't think it could. It does have a good cameo from character actor George Buck Flower, but beyond that, absolutely
No good.
nothing. I hate this movie.
And Tim,
This
you're
movie
gonna
has been
watch
on
it.
my list.
Yeah.
You have not done anything to take it off of my list. I haven't seen
Okay.
it. I've seen other films he's done from this period. I've seen Nightmare Sisters fairly recently, which
Okay.
is also just very bad, but in a way that's fun.
All right, well, keep us posted on
yeah.
your watch party and how you guys like it. I'm somewhat intrigued. I think I'm somewhere in the middle of both of you guys right now, where I'm like, I don't know, but Tim's joy on his face makes me like a little bit excited.
I want to point out that I got almost as mad at you for putting a David DeCoteau film on your list as I did at Carrie for putting E.T. on hers.
Come on.
Equals.
Like,
they're equals.
It's a thing of
Well,
like,
I don't expect better from Carrie. I expect better from you, Brennan.
no,
Harsh.
like I said, David DeCoteau is a very interesting filmmaker. He does not make interesting films.
That's fair. That is real.
And I would argue the same, certainly post 80s for Charles Band. Like he's a fascinating person who makes films that are mostly unwatchable.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to the horror literature, Tim Sack question, he has a memoir that came out like 2 years ago called Confessions of a Puppet Master. That is one of the best memoirs of the decade, at least. It's really, really good.
All right.
Anyway, that's that for me on Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bowl-o-rama.
Number 2. All right, Tim, your number 2 and mine, I think, overlap.
Maybe. If you've seen this, they probably overlap. I have a suspicion you have not seen this. So this comes from a genre that is already a little bit on the dubious and whiffy side, that being the low budget version of a Japanese Daikaiju Eiga or a giant monster movie. And it comes at a point in time when the Daikaiju Eiga was not really, it didn't really exist. The genre sort of died off in the mid 70s and was brought back in 1984 when Toho decided to go all in on Godzilla for that character's 30th anniversary. And in the middle, for that 10 years there's basically no such thing as a giant monster movie out of Japan. But Daiei, the other company that really went all in on this genre during its heyday, decided, well, God damn it, we're going to try anyway. And in 1980, they released a film called Gamera Super Monster, which is the final film in the sort of classic era of Gamera films, even though it came out like 8 years after the one preceding. So it's kind of like an island of Gamera. Gamera being the flying turtle who has tusks and breathes fire and is obviously like the size of a city block. And Gamera Super Monster was made for the smallest quantity of money it was possible to make, which largely involved all of the footage of Gamera. I think literally all of the footage of Gamera has been clipped from other movies with this character and reassembled. Not well at all, because it's not designed to cut together. So they just kind of basically have characters like describe a narrative and then they just show random shots of Gamera. And during the narrative itself, they can spend no money on their visual effects, but they're also trying to do a Star Wars ripoff. So they literally do things like have photos and drawings of spaceships and like kind of wiggle them down in front of the camera to make it look like a spaceship is flying through space. It is one of the most transparently cheap movies that I have ever seen. They are trying to do so much on no budget at all. It's embarrassing that a actual company released this. It's embarrassing to the legacy of Gamera, who's already a character whose legacy was pretty beat up by that point. And this film kind of was part of why Daiei went under. Like they just shat this into theaters, and it was, even though it cost nothing to make, it made literally nothing. Like it somehow managed to tank despite having no budget, and basically killed off Gamera for like 15 years and severely wounded Daiei as a company. And it's amateurish. It's the sloppiest, most humiliating kind of amateurish non-filmmaking. And that's why I've seen it twice.
It sounds real bad. Did he make a comeback? You said he was gone for 15 years. Did he come back?
Yeah, there's a trilogy of Gamera films from the 90s that are quite good and very highly regarded and actually made a great deal of money.
Well, that's a little success story then. I think that's good to know. Good to know.
No, I have the Gamera collection, and it is going to go into my eyeballs at some point in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years. And I'm not going to skip one, but you've only medium sold it to me.
I mean, this is the one that hurts. None of the other Gamera films hurt. They all have that cheesy giant monster quality. That's just kind of fun, even when it's bad. Gamera Super Monster like actually hurts to watch.
Yeah, because at least the clip shows they did for a lot of like some of the Godzilla ones add a thing. Like even is it All Monsters Attack?
That's really bad though.
It is really bad, but they at least invented a monster to throw in. They had that like bully monster.
All right.
Anyway,
well, that sounds atrocious. I'm not adding that to my list. This is the one I thought we were going to line up on, Tim. We watched it together, and it was so bad. So bad that I don't remember anything about it either. This one
called When Harry Met Sally.
Oh my gosh. That's the number one from the 80s, if it was the 80s. So this one's with Alfie and Bibby, two youths from Canada who come to try to compete in the World Vision Song Festival, as one does. And then they have talent, but they lose. And then they don't realize that there's something nefarious going on in this rock star world. This was another one that we all watched together as a movie club watch party. Again, it's just, this is in my opinion, the worst one that we ever have watched at a watch party. By far, I'd say.
That
worse
simply
than Mac and Me.
Cannot be true.
So bad. Are you still thinking about the Blue Lagoon?
I mean, that would certainly be my vote for a worse movie than this.
This is 1980s The Apple. Oh my gosh. This was bad.
To me, this is exactly like another one that was on a version of my list. And I was like, no, but that movie's fun. So why would I put that on my list of the worst movies?
But you're saying if I were to watch The Apple alone.
I watched The Apple a lot.
Alone. You watched it alone.
I've watched it alone. I've watched it with crowds. I've watched it on our watch party.
You watched it with crowds. When have you watched it with a crowd?
At B-Fest.
Oh, you did? You literally did watch it with the crowd. Oh, okay.
First time I saw this movie was at B-Fest. The year that I had cancer at B-Fest, this was the only movie
that kept you going.
Vigorous enough to distract me from having cancer.
Oh my gosh. It is vigorous. I will give you that. I don't know what happened in this movie. It made no sense. It was all over the place. Again, Bibby and Alfie just didn't do it for me. And I remember feeling like I will carry this with the rest of my life as just being one of the best. It was the best experiencing with a group. But again, watch it alone. And this is just the apples fall too far from the tree, I'd say. So
I find this film delightful. And I believe actually Brennan's opinion of it is even more favorable than my own.
What? Wait,
I mean, well, I brought it up earlier. Look, I don't have a leg to stand on being mad at you about this because I did put Xanadu on my list, and they're very similar, at least in terms of like where they came from and when they came from. But the Apple I find to be a glorious, messy, beautiful object that I enjoyed deeply very much. So
I'm alone on my little pedestal here then. I'm just going to slink down off of my pedestal. But go ahead.
I would just say the Apple I actually think is more in a family with three late 70s, early 80s movies that I love wholeheartedly, which is Phantom of the Paradise, The Apple, and Shock Treatment, which they all have the kind of like Faustian bargain as viewed through like music and entertainment, and all of them are wonderful, campy, wild movies in very different ways.
Now that you've lined that up, I would like very much to do that as a triple feature.
Oh yeah, I haven't done it because triple features I don't tend to have time for.
Triple features are a tall order, yes,
but
it's one that I would do first if I had the time.
You guys have weird taste. unique taste. All right, this is it, Brennan. We're coming into your number one at only almost a 2-hour episode. So let's keep it. I'm just kidding. Take your time. Take your time.
No, that's okay. I extremely doubt that either of you have seen the movie that I'm about to say, so I'll try to do it reasonably quickly. It is the slasher that I have. It is the worst movie of the 1980s, just bar none. It couldn't be budged from number one. It was the first movie I thought of when this topic was presented. Okay. So you have, if I have accidentally or unintentionally sold to you any of the movies on my previous list, any of the four, that's fine. You can watch Sorority Babes. You can watch Airplane 2. You can watch Killing of the Flesh. Do not let me sell this movie to you. You will not have a good time. It is awful. I'm
already on board.
Yep. It is from the golden year of the 1980s slasher. It is from 1981. It has a title that is heretical to me. It is in its 1983 re-release, which it is more known for. It was known by the title Scream, but its original title was The Outing. And that is the title that I prefer to refer to it as, so as not to besmirch the 1996 Scream, which I know Tim doesn't care about, but I love that movie. It is about a group of stranded rafters who seek refuge in a ghost town where they are killed one by one by an unseen assailant. Literally unseen, to the point where obviously it's pretty rote for a slasher, where like you see a weapon raised in the air, you see it come down, you don't see who's doing it until the end. But literally the killer has been killed. You never see who it is or why, or if it's a ghost or a human or what. It simply does not matter. There are like 14 characters in this movie with about 1.5 character traits between them, and almost none of them die. And also 2 bikers show up to just add to their number. And the movie just mainly is shots of the camera panning across this quiet, empty street in a ghost town, not with any atmosphere. It'll just pan across for a couple minutes and then just pan back for another couple minutes. It is an extravagantly pointless movie. It is deeply boring, and I'm going to bring up the fact that this exists in the movie, but again, don't let it sell you. There is one scene with a ghost cowboy, and even that fails to be interesting. It is one of the most unpleasant, vigorously, contemptuously awful experiences I've ever had watching a movie.
You gonna watch it, Tim?
Well, you sold me pretty hard, but I don't like to hear that most of the cast survives, because that's usually the sign of a pretty mediocre slasher film.
Yes, and yeah, the kills are next to nothing. You maybe get a little smudge of ketchup on the wall, but
Okay.
it has nothing to offer to anyone.
I have had it on my radar because of the 1983 re-release title, because like obviously the fact that there's another slasher film called Scream is of note, and I think a lot of people probably know of it for that reason. Never gotten around to watching it. Sounds like I don't need to bump it up the list, but I don't think you said anything that's going to make me take it off the list.
Well, just don't go in thinking it's going to be a Bella Tarr film or something. It's just boring. It has nothing to offer.
I get that.
All right. It sounds mid to me, but won't put it
No.
on my list.
Not mid. Listen to me. Please believe me. It is the most wretched.
I mean, I'm sure it's no
undesirable.
E.T. the Extraterrestrial or Ron.
I
Yeah,
know.
you're
In terms of just how
exactly.
desperately boring it is.
It can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. All right. Well, good list altogether, Tim. All right, let's hear what you have for your number one. I'm afraid.
I have here a film that I publicly declared makes the concept of a rating scale useless because numbers don't go low enough to accommodate it. That's how much I hate this film. This is 1987's The Garbage Pail Kids movie, a film based off of a series of trading cards. And the trading cards were around the idea, what if the Cabbage Patch Kids were gross?
Mhm.
Very just quintessentially 80s concept for a property here. So you have these toddlers or these childlike baby figures whose names are all like rude wordplay,
Yeah.
and whose character traits are all the same, like unpleasant characteristics. So you have like,
Stinky Stew.
I don't know, like Farty Frank.
Yes, exactly.
And Boogers O'Brien and things like that.
I had that card.
So they made this into a film, and the film is this just unrelentingly disgusting litany of these jokes, sort of detached from anything resembling the plot, which is about 2 high school students, one of whom is a boy who does not yet appear to have gone through puberty, one of whom is a girl who appears to have fully exited puberty. So even though the actors were only like 15 months apart, it appears that you have this like 9-year-old boy hitting on an 18-year-old girl, and she is receptive to it. And it's very, very gross. Grosser than anything that like the boogers and the pissing and the burping and whatnot could be. And meanwhile, you have Anthony Newley, the like British musical comedy star and writer, playing this like crusty old man, and he's like weirdly tragic. I don't like Anthony Newley, but just seeing him like stranded in this movie where he's like the sort of old wizened shopkeeper just makes me feel horribly depressed for the state of his career. And so we have this movie that's basically about all of these hideous creatures. And the film has this bizarre attempt to be a plot that simultaneously don't judge people for being gross, but also like everything that happens in the movie assumes that you find these characters gross and scary and you don't want to spend time around them. It's just very confused, very unpleasant, and just in general, just appallingly badly made. The suits look awful because all the Garbage Pail Kids are like full body suits.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so
They look
is it live
terrible.
action?
What?
Is it live
What's that?
action?
Oh, it's live action.
Okay. I haven't seen this.
It's live action. Oh, it's painful.
Oh.
It's a painful, repulsive sit.
Did you collect the cards when you were a kid?
I did not.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was creeped out by them as a kid. My neighbor did, and it was a big red flag for me. Like,
Sure.
I thought he was kind of like bad for having those and owning those. I was like, these are gross. The cards were gross too. Ugh.
I will say I have seen this film twice. So there you go.
Such a glutton for punishment.
Which seems like the minimum amount of times you've seen a bad movie.
I've only seen Skullduggery once.
Okay, good move.
I've only seen Oasis. Actually, the only films on my list I've seen twice are my top two. So
all right, well, you know very well how much you don't like this.
Yes. Well, I, at my number one, am shocked that neither of you guys had this on your list. I was 100% sure that you guys were going to have it. This falls
I can't guess that it's my favorite film of the 1980s because you already mentioned that was your number 6. So
wait, Ran was your favorite movie from
that's
the
my
80s?
favorite film of the 80s. Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's so boring. The hair. So this one had to be at the top. It was the first one that came to mind, along with E.T. when I thought about this list. I don't hate is such a strong word, and I was at work the other day and I used the word hate. It's kind of like beeping a horn at somebody when you're like, ooh, like, oh, I said that out loud. And so I said hate, and the guy
you're so pure. I love you, Carrie.
I use the word hate very freely.
Well, the weird thing is I don't use it, but I did use it, and I knew it was strong the minute it came out of my mouth. And the guy across from me was just like, ooh, that's a strong word, which just recoiled my stomach, just like I was like 7 years old again.
In what context was this?
I was just like, I don't even know.
Yeah, were you like, I hate the pie that your wife made, or like what?
No, like it was like about like a work thing. Like it wasn't about a person. It was just like, oh, I hate that.
Because I mean, like I'll be like, God, I hate having to go to these workshops, and like I'll just say that, and it will not even register with me that someone might take offense at that.
Yeah, he did too. I don't know. So again, I'll never say it again, but I will say I do feel the H word about this person, which this is why it makes me feel so bad. And the thing is, I don't know a lot about this person, but everything about this person gives me like the jeebies. And even as a kid, as a tiny kid, I remember seeing him on TV and being so creeped out. And so I couldn't watch his stuff, but I did see his movie. And
oh, no.
Everything about him bothered me, which is probably all so offensive. I don't even know how much I'm offending you.
I would like to assume you did at least some modicum of research before you committed to this monologue.
I didn't in any way, which is
what
why.
If you're about to name some unbelievably kindly man?
That's what I'm worried about. But I just think he's so weird. So as a kid,
I think I know where we're going, and I'm
worried. My whole body is
tensed
up. My whole body is just like a knot of tension right now.
What do you think it is?
I have no idea.
Want to know what I think it is?
Yeah,
no idea who this is.
All right, who is it, Brennan?
It sounds like you're talking about Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is that bad not to like that movie?
It's pretty bad.
It's not like morally bad.
This movie, it's so like he's just riding around on his bike. His bike gets stolen. And
no, he's not, because it's stolen. Yeah, okay.
Well, no, but he's like, yeah, so he's not on his bike, but he wants his bike. And then he's like, but it's all, he's just riding. He's not riding. He's just looking for his bike, and he's just he's laughing so weird. And like he's kind of like Woody the Woodpecker, only in like a human. And I just felt like I just was creeped out by him as a kid, and I never like regrouped from it. I don't know why I was so creeped out by Pee Wee Herman, but he gave me bad feelings. I don't know.
I mean, he's like an avant-garde stand-up comedy character. So like he's not like not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's
I can see being turned off by the thing that it is.
I didn't understand why he was so famous. Like as a kid, even I was like, "How is this something that people are into? How are people watching this?" So tell me, does he like a humanitarian or something that I didn't know about?
I wouldn't say
he did
humanitarian.
recently pass away. I don't know.
Oh, he did.
He
did.
Shoot.
I don't think he's done anything bad to anyone.
I mean, he's a convicted sex offender.
Oh, he is.
Well, for jerking off in a porn theater, like what do they want from you?
So he wasn't affecting anybody else, is what you're saying in that scenario.
I mean,
He was affecting himself pretty significantly, I think.
I feel like it's part of what you expect to be what happens when you go to one of those places. If someone's pulling their pud, to use the phrase that we've all recently landed on.
Gross. Let's never. After this episode, I'm banning that phrase from all future episodes. Okay. Yeah, I just can't get past. I can't get. So you guys, Brennan, you seem like you like Pee-wee. You're into Pee-wee.
I've only seen the movie as far as Pee-wee's extended body of work.
Same.
Okay, good. I can totally get why you'd find him off-putting. It's definitely a live-action cartoon character kind of thrust into this very zany world. I haven't seen it in a long, long time. I don't know if I would find Pee-wee appealing, but I remember a lot of stuff about the movie that I enjoyed, just to kind of, because it's a Tim Burton movie, in an early Tim Burton movie. It's got a very intriguing kind of visual and storytelling style that I think is what helped put him on the map, and I think it deserves to have done so.
Interesting. I'll have to never watch it again, but I'll research it a little bit. It does show up on lists of people's favorite movies, which is why my mind was blown. It was like,
people have tremendous nostalgia for this film. I think it's quite charming. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I'm that level.
I'm not showing my kids this one, that's for sure. We're not gonna snuggle in on a Friday night and watch Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That's for sure for me. But anyway,
I do think it has one of the like quintessential scary when you're a kid scenes. The one where he picks up the hitchhiker, or he gets picked up as a hitchhiker by a truck driver named Large Marge.
Oh yeah, Large Marge. See, it's even rude to Marge. Gosh, so many things, so many things about this movie. But nevertheless, I'm going to give myself the hook on this one. But I do want to call out that we do have a winner this week who shared that I'm not enough of a hate watcher to make a meaningful list here, as most of the really bad 80s movies I've seen are merely bottom tier franchise entries like Star Trek V, Jason Takes Mountain, or Never Say Never Again. However, if there is a worse trend in the 80s, it was comedies that treated SA as a joke. And possibly
sexual assault.
Oh,
sorry, I didn't mean to just shout that. It's like watching Jeopardy. Like, I know
that is bad, and possibly the worst there is Revenge of the Nerds. So that would be my pick for the worst of the decade. This is Damian Oakes. So congratulations, Damian. Shoot us an email at contact@alternateending.com to claim your free Amazon movie rental. In closing, thanks for joining us for our first 2-hour episode. We really appreciate it.
We are not at 2 hours.
It's close.
And I don't think it's your first.
It's probably not. And
we are going to come in at about 1:56.
And that will be our prize. We're saving you all 3 minutes of your lives. So enjoy this in 3 to 4 installments on your commute. We hope you enjoyed it. And thank you for joining us. You can go out, catch us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and always at alternateending.com. We'll catch you next time.